Hi you guys, welcome to the Laux Family Farm. I'm Amber and today I'm going to be taking you on a garden tour. We are gardening and homesteading in Northwest Indiana. The zone is 6A to 5B. We are right off of Lake Michigan, and so I really do feel like 5B is probably a more accurate zone for us. However, I do try to practice sticking to the 6B just to be safe. Here you will see one of my main vegetable gardens. This is just my second year gardening in this space. Last year, Alex, my husband, finished building me this brand new garden for Mother's Day, and we've had a little bit of a rough start. Last year we did have some, I don't know if it was contaminated soil or just really poor soil quality. We didn't really check the company we were buying the soil from, and so our plants really struggled. Also, it's a very clay base, especially here on this part of our property. You can see we have a farm pond behind us, and we did excavate that in 2020, and we brought a lot of clay and dirt and we laid it out on this part of our property because it was so low lying and it was really flooded. So it does gather some water, it does have a lot of clay. And so this season we really worked on getting these beds built up with really good compost and soil, and just bringing in a lot of the bedding from our ducks and geese and even rabbit, all of that cold fertilizer from the animals to try to make this garden just really come to life. And so far we've already had such a great year compared to last. However, this season our challenge has been we really had a late start. My husband and I just celebrated 10 years of marriage, and so we went on our first ever vacation. We called it our honeymoon. And so all of that preparation and getting the kids and the farm ready for us to leave out of the country for a week, we really kind of neglected the garden, or we didn't even really neglect it. It was put low on the priority. But we are still having a beautiful year. We are just a little bit behind compared to other people in our area, but that's okay. We're still gonna have a great harvest just a little bit later. So let me show you what I have going on here. We'll start from the front and work our way back. So right here in the first section of my garden, you'll see we have all of these wild flowers growing on the outside. But in this first bed here, we have a lot of zinnias, sunflowers, and giant marigolds. These were the last seeds to go in the ground, so they are looking the most puny, but they're going to just shoot up and be massive in no time. All of these plants here that you will see, these are cosmos, and they actually self-seeded from last year's plants because I let so many go to seed. We also have some volunteer celosia from last year's garden. Now I'm just gonna let those go. There's another celosia, but all of these other ones, those are little sunflowers. I have some other cut flower varieties. I cannot remember what they're called, but they're the cutest little yellow balls. I'm trying to look for my tag. Oh, here we go. They are Sunball Crespidia, Globiosa, I don't know, but if you guys can read that, it's Sunball. They're really cute. They look like little yellow pom-poms. And then at the end of the bed, I have some squash planted. I believe these are actually zucchinis. And then I have yellow squash here. And right behind that on our second bed, I have cucumbers that I just direct seeded 2 weeks ago. These metal poles here will be the trellis that they are going to climb. This week I need to add some string, which I will weave back and forth and give the cucumbers something to climb up. We really wanted to have them climbing on cattle panels, but we just ran out, and cattle panels aren't super cheap. But right next to it, you can see we have tomatoes growing. And if you did not know, if you want to trellis your garden with cattle panels, you see right here, these are bent and dent cattle panels. You can go to your local feed store and request a discount on any cattle panels they have that are banged up and less than perfect. And they typically will sell them to you. We got these 50% off. This is probably my biggest tomato right now. It's called a Celebrity Plus, maybe, from Johnny's. And then some nasturtiums I just popped in recently. And a couple peppers. I think this is some sort of chili pepper, I believe, or maybe it's a banana. I did so bad at labeling my garden this year. On this side of the trellis, I do have a lot of dill planted. I was trying to find things I could self-seed that would grow quickly for us. And then the last bed in this corner of our garden is full of mainly watermelon. But I do have a squash at the very end here, and also sunflowers going straight down the end row. So it'll be sunflowers for my cut flower arrangements, and then this is all watermelon. I have 5 different watermelon varieties. And we'll see if these actually make it to having a harvest before our frost. I believe we should. It just depends on if our days stay warm. At the very end, I do have spaghetti squash planted. So that's what these are. And they're looking pretty great. So the downside with planting later in the season is that your days are slowly getting shorter and shorter. So even if the seed packet says 75 days till harvest, that's not completely accurate when you plant past the summer solstice, because your days keep getting shorter. So you really have to account for that fruit to take more days because they're getting less sun. However, you also have to take into account that the days are already hotter, so it takes shorter amount of time for your seed to germinate, and they typically grow faster. But another negative, again, is that the pest pressure is higher, and you really have to come out and water a lot more often to make sure that the seed does germinate. Because it is so warm, the soil dries faster. So there are some benefits to later plantings, but there are also a lot of negatives to consider as well. So hopefully next year we'll have a really good early spring planting, and then we can succession plant for a second harvest this time of year. Moving on, we are going to do this next corner. We kind of have our garden broken up into 4 quadrants. So that was the first section, onto the second. Again, you can just see all of our wildflowers on the outside. I really love this because when all of our neighbors drive by, or all of our customers for our farm stand you see located right there, they just see all of this beautiful color of the wildflowers. But right here, this is where I have our yellow squash. I have 4 plants at the end here, and then 1 on that bed. Because the plan is I have pretty wide walkways, and that is so that we can get the tractor in here and my gorilla cart. But the plan is to have these squash, they'll start crawling out into the walkway. But behind the squash, we have some sweet corn planted. And it is not looking great. It is looking slightly stunted. And that's kind of surprising. We did plant this in the right time. I think this is a result from drought. We had a very dry spring here. And so this is actually the same height as corn I planted 3 weeks later after we came back from our honeymoon. The soil here as well in this bed, we amended the least compared to all the other beds. So worst comes to worst, this won't really produce a lot of sweet corn, but I'll have stalks still, and I can do some cute little fall arrangements to sell at the farm stand with just these little mini corn stalks. So it won't be wasted. It's always a learning experience when something isn't doing well. So the second bed on this quadrant is mainly cherry tomatoes and more watermelon. With the cherry tomatoes, I am trying out the Florida weave. I will admit though, I have been neglecting it so bad. I should have had about 2 or 3 more strings put in place, but so far they aren't falling over. This one is starting to lean, so I have to do that this week But you can see they are putting on a lot of fruit for us. And I only have about 2 that aren't looking well. I don't know what variety that is. I'm sure I could look at a tag. Yellow pear cherries. Which, oh, look at that. That is so cute. They look like little pears. Oh yeah, this definitely needs another string. It's really needs attention. Okay, but this, oh, this isn't a yellow pear. This one is orange honeycomb. So we'll see. They're putting on fruit, but they are just not doing well. You can see that coloring is not good. Maybe a little bit nutrient deficient. Should probably fertilize them. Here we have some more tomatoes. These are our Roma tomatoes. You can see some good fruit starting. I also have some alyssum I've planted that I'm hoping will kind of spread out at the feet of these tomatoes. You can see more sections of it right here, right here. More volunteer cosmos in the walkway. And then here are our other watermelons. I planted these a week earlier than the others. These are sugar babies. I also want to highlight at the very end this plant we have always had on our property. It's mullein. It's not a native plant, however, it does have a lot of medicinal properties. From looking online, I believe it's originally from Europe, but a lot of people do use it for different medical remedies, and this thing is massive. But I let it grow the last 2 years because the placement couldn't be better. These do not survive tilling, so because it's located directly in this corner, right to the side of where we dug a post hole, it survived, and I'm so thankful because that is such a mature, beautiful plant. Isn't that insane? And the leaves are so fuzzy. All right, for reference, I am 5 foot tall, and it's very tall. Anyways, that's pretty amazing. The last bed on this quadrant actually has our new garden beds that Alex built for me so that I could have my arched cattle panel trellises. I love it. It reminds me of a covered wagon. Any of you millennials out there remember Oregon Trail? Just was my favorite growing up. And this, tell me that does not remind you of a covered wagon. It's so cute. This is the section of the garden I am the most in love with, at the same time the most disappointed. So my peppers are probably the most pathetic peppers I've ever seen. All of this was just plants that were left in nursery pots well past the time they needed to be planted. I think it's going to be a pretty sad year for peppers. I'm going to show you them anyways because I'm still proud of myself. These are all started from seeds. My entire garden, I wanted this year to really push myself and not buy pre-started plants, to just buy seeds this year and start my garden fully from seeds and just challenge myself in that way. So a lot of these are actually putting on little fruits like these cayenne peppers. This poor little plant has 1 pepper, and that's kind of sad because that means that this plant is trying to reproduce before it dies. I'll probably have like 1 thing of fresh salsa with these plants. That is a cow horn pepper. The entire pepper should be about the size of 1.5 of this little plant. So we'll see what happens with that. But I do have some basil, which I need to pop the top off of that because it's starting to flower. This also was stressed from water, but because it's just such a much more hardy plant, they're doing pretty well. This is a sweet basil and it smells incredible. I also have some little stunted chamomile plants, but they are starting to make a comeback. That is Thai basil. All of these behind, all of those plants are green beans. I have a purple variety here in the front, and then behind are just regular stringless green beans, bush beans, and then growing, this is the one plant, actually I have 4 of them because it's my favorite plant, rosemary. I did buy started plants of those. Rosemary by far is one of my favorite scents. It's just that perfect mix between floral and cologne-y, I guess. I just love it. It calms me more than lavender. So I make a lot of soaps here to sell at our farm stand, and I want to do some sort of rosemary soap. I'm just trying to wait until I have enough to use a lot of my own herbs to make it. Now, before I show you what we have growing on the arch trellis, I'm gonna go ahead and touch on the first bed on this 3rd quadrant because it's kind of mirrored. This side, we have all my spicy peppers or lack thereof. And then on this side is all my sweet peppers. I did get a few of these plants in the ground before we left. So some of these look halfway decent. I mean, halfway decent if you compare it to those plants. They still look really pathetic when you compare it to other people's plants that had their life together in this spring. But again, I'm going to show you, and then we will touch on my pride and joy, which is this arch trellis, which even though we got it planted so late, it is really starting to fill out and look phenomenal. Okay. We have King of the North, which this is a Baker Creek variety. It has some huge red, very dark red peppers that are sweet. And then we have Nadapeños, which these are perking up so much, and that is making me so happy because I was looking forward to these. I really want to try to make my kids jalapeno peppers that aren't spicy. So these Nadapeños have the taste of a jalapeno without the spice. Then these are just your regular sweet pepper varieties. The other pepper plant, I hope, figures itself out and gives me at least 1 or 2 peppers, is this Zulu pepper. Another Baker Creek variety I started from seed. It grows a massive black fruit. And I have so many that made it, they're just not doing anything because of the stress. But then again, behind the sweet peppers, we have the green beans, the purple beans first, and then the green beans, which these purple beans are really looking amazing. Check this out. You can already see a little bit of action starting. How cool is that? And our green beans are also looking pretty wonderful. How fun. Some of them are a little chartreuse colored, which means they need some nutrition. So I definitely need to get out here and fertilize these plants between the pumpkins and watermelons. And even these peppers will probably do really well. Okay, so here is my pride and joy, the arch trellis. Alex built me these garden beds specifically for the vision of having secret garden, tunnel, walkway. He used all scrap wood that he found in a dumpster at a job site. So I'm really impressed with his craftsmanship, working with free materials. These cattle panels we did buy full priced because this is a permanent structure and I didn't want them to be wonky. I wanted it to just be really beautiful. So it was worth spending the extra money. Just like these beds, these are mirrored images. We first have some long beans that actually have some pests going on. Doesn't look very good. So there's long beans and then just regular pole beans, which these are really taking off. They're taller than me. Here's this side. The long beans are just starting to climb and attach. We're just gonna help them. There's my geese. I really do love where my garden's placed, right by the pond. So we have 5 geese. Our youngest little goslings, Adrian and Marionette. Don't know which is which, they're like twins. They're Sebastopol's. And then over here in the corner, that's Louis. He is a white and gray Sebastopol. Next to Louis is Catherine. She is fully gray. Again, a Sebastopol. And then Eleanor, we have no idea what she is. Just probably a plain white goose. But she was my first goose and I just love her to death. She has been such a good mom. She's basically adopted all of these baby goslings as we've gotten them. We just let her take care of them, and she's done a wonderful job. So they're pretty much my buddies all the time when I'm out here. Okay, back to the garden tour. Long beans, pole beans, and then we have daisy gourds growing on this side. They are just ready to start sending out their tendrils to start climbing. And also we have loofah plants at the very end, and they are really starting to take off. Isn't nature amazing how they just know? On this side, after the green beans, we have Kajari melons. So the Kajari melon I've never grown before, but it's supposed to be a really delicious fruit, and it looks so cool. It has this really beautiful striping once it's fully mature. And then starting here at the end, the last 3 plants are Tommy apple melons. And these guys are not only sending out tendrils to attach and grow, it's also starting to flower. So these are just really taking off and looking amazing. Now on the back side of my garden, you will see all of these tomato plants. These are all volunteers we have transferred from my cut flower garden and this garden. And we've planted on the back outside fence and just let them do their thing. We still have so many more volunteers that keep popping up everywhere. And no idea what the fruit is, but they are just loving life. I'm not going to prune them or anything. I'll probably come out here with some Velcro and tie them up onto the fence to keep growing upwards and not come into my flower beds. But I'm surprised the deer, since they're not on the inside of the fence, they haven't eaten them. And also this area does get a little shaded because of the trees here. But besides the plants looking just a little bit more leggy the further down you get closer to the trees, they are still just outperforming everything else we have here. Look at all of this. So I'm hoping that this will be an entire wall of tomato plants, which is really exciting since we had such a late start to our season. We will definitely be overrun with tomatoes. Okay, so we already discussed this bed. Over here, this is where I have a lot of one of our last successions of sunflowers. I think we will plant sunflowers one more time. And these are all pro cut varieties. This is Pro Cut orange or red? Orange. My daughter wrote my tags. She did good. But between her writing and the sun, I'm having a hard time. I think that's orange. Then that should be Pro Cut red on that bed. We have more tomatoes, and they are struggling a little bit. Would probably benefit from a fertilization, probably. But they are producing fruit for me. These are mainly delicious. And then I do have some others, but we ran out of cattle panels, and so I'm trying to just use stakes for these plants and see how they do. So I'm trying to prune pretty heavily, but because the plants are a little bit stunted and unhealthy, I haven't had a problem with it. Although they really are starting to look so healthy in the last week. So that is really exciting. I have basil planted all along the edge. I just direct seeded it, so it's a little bit harder to see. Little basil. And then I have this purple basil I started from seed. It's doing okay. It's not the best. And then more squash. I labeled them, but the sun's already faded that, so I don't remember what it was. I think acorn squash, maybe? Something like that. Over here is my other biggest disappointment, but I know from other people it is a hard one to master. So this is my first year trying to grow eucalyptus, and most of these plants are looking really tiny. I started them in February, and so you can see they are the size of my hand. I mean, maybe some are slightly bigger. So to not make this space fully wasted, I did plant some nasturtiums about 2 weeks ago to just try to make this space at least be beautiful. I didn't want to plant too much because I've also heard that eucalyptus might be kind of toxic for other plants. They're not very friendly to grow things close beside them. So over here you can just see they just get even more puny. So I'll try again next year and hopefully have more success. We had one volunteer tomato plant right here, so I'm going to get a tomato cage and just let that be. It's right at the edge of the walkway, so it shouldn't be a problem. Then there's the rest of our Pro Cut sunflowers. And then I have more alyssum on the edge of this bed. So hopefully in the next couple weeks, this space will fill out and be beautiful. On to the last section. We have some more squash at the end that I will have trail into the middle. Over here we have pumpkin pie pumpkins. So these are specifically for baking with. More sunflowers planted down the end. Oh, look at that. Another volunteer tomato plant. I'll probably let this one stay as well. Just put a tomato cage right on top of it. Why not? I didn't have a good germination with my pumpkin pie pumpkins. So I don't know what this space will look like. I don't know if it'll fill out. The next bed over here, I have celebrity tomatoes again with sweet banana peppers. Nasturtium planted on the edges. And then more tomato plants growing up the trellis. And I tried to plant basil here on the sides, but it's not germinating well. So I don't really know if I'll have basil. And then just like the other end, I have our cucumbers that I'll grow up these stakes after I add some twine or rope. Probably do some paracord again. And on the last bed, I have more squash that I don't know the name of. The good thing with squash is once it starts producing fruit, you know exactly what it is. So I will find out what squash I planted where. But we have some more sunflowers, a volunteer Cosmo, and then we have feverfew. This is another first time plant I'm growing. I grew it to be a filler for my cut flowers, and it's just really not doing much for me, so I must have messed something up along the way. It's kind of a brighter green, so I'm thinking again I need to give it some fertilization. Any tips on feverfew, eucalyptus? Please give me all the helpful tips because I need it. And then just more zinnias, and I popped in a couple cucumbers that I thinned from the other places, so I don't know if they'll take. I just did that like 2 days ago, so I think that one might be a goner, but this one might make it through. And a couple giant marigolds. And I think the only thing I didn't talk about in this garden space is my middle trough. I have strawberries, weeds or grass. We'll take that out right now. I have nasturtium, and this is really fun. I've never grown this variety this year. It's like a peachy. It's so pretty, but I will say from growing nasturtium, their leaves when they get older or stressed, they go yellow. And so seeing these yellow flowers almost makes me feel like my nasturtium is just unhealthy, but they really are beautiful. I also have strawberries that are almost ready. This one, I think by tomorrow will be gone. My kiddos will find it. And we have a couple more over here. These are just ever-bearing strawberries, so we never get enough to really make any jams or anything delicious, but definitely enough to like have a fun little snack. Also, a ton of Japanese beetles are just wreaking havoc. And then the star of the show is this calendula, which by tomorrow will be fully opened. If I haven't edited this video, right here I will pop in a clip of this in the sun, looking absolutely stunning, and I'll share it with you. There was also an accidental planting of some basil in here, so if you dig around, I can find some sweet basil. So that was a happy accident. So it really does smell so good between the calendula and basil. I really love the pairing. Also, this bucket is full of more volunteer tomato plants that I have pulled up from the rest of the garden. Have not had the heart to get rid of, so I'm letting them slowly die in this bucket while I try to find spaces around the garden. But I will be taking you to my cut flower garden on the other end of our property, and you'll see there's still so many more tomato plants over there. It makes me so sad to just get rid of all these volunteer plants because they obviously want to grow so badly, but I truly don't have space. I don't know where to plant them. If it was a plant that could just crawl and be fine, I would just let them be everywhere, but these just kind of try to grow up everything. And in the cut flower garden, I've noticed they're starting to take over some of my plants that I spent decent money on the seeds to have beautiful flowers for bouquets. So I have started ripping them up, and it's breaking my heart, but how many tomato plants do you need, really? I just don't know how much more I could have. The front side of this garden does have wildflowers as well, but this area collects so much water. It's definitely like the overflow of our pond here flows through here. And so the plants have really struggled on this side. Over on this side of the garden, these are all thriving. They're attracting all of the pollinators. Like, look at all these getting ready to open. Look at these. So beautiful. I love this view. So here's the farm stand. So when people drive by and down this road, this is what they're met with. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. The end over here has some really nice soil. You can see the clay that I'm talking about. So that is originally what all of this garden is, this very dry clay. So you can see we've been working up the soil, really trying to get it to thrive. But over here on the end, it's less clay. And you can tell by how lush this section is. Like, how magical is this? Oh, here's another view of the mullein. Mullein? It's a beautifully ugly plant, right? Like, how awkward is that? But, oh, I love it. A couple sunflowers back here, putting on their little faces. Right. Oh, and then this area too. I have so many, we call them ditch lilies. I know they're day lilies. My sister and I actually made a simple syrup with the daylilies because they are fully edible, if you didn't know. Maybe I should make a video about it and make it again. I love them. But here is the great wall of volunteer tomato plants. Check these things out. What do we think? Oh, yep. Look at that. I really think they're gonna be cherry tomatoes. Hopefully not all of them though, right? Could we have that bad of luck? One can only have so many cherry tomato plants. Some of these have to be slicers or Roma. Oh, but look at, I really think another cherry. Oh no. But that's exciting, there's fruit on them. So there's another view of my vegetable garden. I think she's pretty amazing. And I think each year going forward, she's just gonna get better and better. So I'm going to walk you guys now to the other end of our property where I have our cut flower garden. We also have started a pumpkin patch this year because if you didn't know, we do have a farm stand on our property. I've already kind of showed it a couple times in this video, and we mainly on the weekends, but we do have some weekdays. We sell sourdough bread, farm fresh eggs, firewood, soaps that I've made here using lard from pigs raised on our farm. And we also do cut flower bouquets in the summertime. So on the other end of my property is where I have the majority of those flowers, but as you saw here, I do succession sow some of the sunflowers, and even these wildflowers I do use as fillers. But as we walk that way, I'll just show you, this is our farm stand. It is closed for the day. We actually had a long weekend camping trip, so I did close it this weekend. But I'm going to be opening her up tomorrow. In the state of Indiana, you do have to refrigerate eggs if you want to sell them. So when we are sold out or closed, I have this sign letting people know if they get onto Facebook, they'll get all sorts of information about when we restock our farm stand. And then I have all of our information. So it's a pretty fun little space for us. We have all of our advertising. So the cut flower garden, it's all the way on the other end. But I have it right next to my kids' play set so that during the day I can work on weeding and tending to that while my kids play outside and can keep a close eye. So this vegetable garden, I do most of the work during the days that I have the farm stand open so I can be available to any customers that stop by, but it is an honor system. We do fully leave the stand some days, and people are so kind and honest here. We've had such a great experience with that. But here on the other side of our house, here is the main hangout area, honestly, where we entertain, where our kids play. And then my cut flower garden. We have been harvesting this section with our Pro Cut sunflowers. You can see a few I've left because I didn't get to them in time. These are Pro Cuts from Johnny's. This was Pro Cut White Light that I do need to come out and actually, no, I don't. So I'm leaving this one for the bees because the beetles got to it before I did. Do you see the nibbling on the petals? And then the same thing for those. So a lot of them are getting ready to bloom. We have some zinnias. These are my queen lime. I just harvested all that were ready. They're absolutely stunning. My gladiolas are getting ready to bloom. Again, all of these volunteer plants. Massive pumpkin plant. If you look right here, that's a tomato plant. I have snapdragons basically getting overrun. Been trying to convince myself that it's okay. It's just going to be a little wild this year. This is probably my favorite celosia variety. It's new to me this year from Johnny's, and it is called Pink Flamingo. And then all of these other varieties are all different types of celosia. I love them so much because they remind me of paintbrushes and feathers. This variety, White Cellaway, really just gives that great green filler with just a little bit of texture. But then you even get these Pompous Plume varieties that have just this stunning leaf foliage, like this all red, or these here that are a mixture. So I have so many of those. It's my main filler. More snapdragons and zinnias. These are the Bernard's Giant. Big volunteer sunflowers also. Look at those. And even look how tall those ones are. This is another volunteer. And I just kind of let those go. It's really pretty beautiful wild space. These will be double click cosmos, just getting ready to start blooming. Have a dark red here, and these are pink and white varieties. And then these are teddy bear sunflowers, I believe. I'm not gonna go over there because I am in sandals, and walking in all this is making me a little bit itchy thinking about all the bugs that are currently climbing on my feet. But these zinnias are just stunning. Over here is really where I've kind of let it go. Volunteer tomato plants everywhere. They're just massive. I've started pulling them up. You can see over here, those are tomato plants I pulled because they're honestly, like, look at this thing. It is taking over my garden. I'm waiting on this one though. It's probably another cherry. If it's a cherry, I'll pull it. But I'm letting it at least try. These are my marigolds. They're called White Swan. They're just starting to really take off. I have actually weeded is my Rebecca, and we are about to have our first bloom. Right on the other end is our pumpkin patch. These plants behind me, they look a little unwell. They are a little bit chartreuse colored, but that's because we transplanted them from this garden. And people say you really can't move squash, but we've decided to try, and they are bouncing back and even have some pumpkins and squash started. Let me show you. So here you can see the older leaves are a little angry, but look how deep green these newer leaves are. It is putting on flowers. These, again, super angry leaves, but the newer ones coming out are starting to look amazing. And then even with this plant, we have fruit. Look at that squash and pumpkin. Isn't that incredible? They tell you not to do it, but we did. Oh, here's another one. Look at that. How exciting. These don't have any fruits yet. These ones aren't doing as well, no fruit yet, but I think some of them are really starting to pull through. All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming with me for this little garden tour. I will try to do another tour within the next 2 to 3 weeks to show you how everything is progressing. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. I really appreciate everyone who's been here so far. We just hit our first 1,000 subscribers, and really, we are just blown away by how many people have decided that they enjoy following along on our homesteading journey. So thank you. We're glad you're here.